Our next speaker, I think you'll enjoy quite a bit, Jeff Pavlovic. Jeff is the Managing Director of Electric Industry Coordination in Mexico's Ministry of Energy. And I think Jeff is going to bring a unique experience and insight to us, because many of you may or may not know that Mexico is going through a great energy transformation. And Jeff is in the midst of that energy transformation. They're interested in putting together an ISO and restructuring their industries and doing some amazing things. And I think the whys and wherefores of that, I think, will be very useful for all of us. Jeff holds degrees in economics and mathematics from Duke University, and a master's degree in business administration from Stanford University, our local university, and a master's degree in economics as well. He was previously managing director of generation and transmission in the Ministry of Energy and unit leader of modernization in, I'll call it CFE because I really can't say Commission Federal de Electricidad well. So let's stick with CFE. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm not going to talk for more than half an hour. That's the agreement. So thank you to the CAISO and to all of you for the invitation and for the interest in what's going on in Mexico. I think it is an interesting time. Some of you know Mexico in 1960 nationalized their electric industry, and the Constitution said that only the state could provide electric service. And that was how it was until 2 years ago, when the Constitution was changed. So now we're opening up the market, opening up the industry, and it's an opportunity for a lot of you and your companies to come and bring your capital, your knowledge, your experience to Mexico, but it's also an opportunity for integration with the California ISO. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about why we did a reform, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the market. I've heard a lot of comments about capacity markets and the price signals we send, so I'm going to try and explain the rationale that we have for our market, and then finally a little bit about integration with California. So we'll get started. Do I have a clicker, or is someone changing these for me? Okay, good. So this is just an overview about what the Mexican system looks like right now. Oh, okay, I'll do this. Okay, I just want to highlight a couple things. First of all, in terms of the resource mix, it's about a quarter clean energy in terms of capacity. And that's with a broad definition of clean energy, including nuclear and large hydro. Really, our focus when we talk about clean energy is about reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, not necessarily excluding nuclear or large hydro. The other important thing on this graph is the size of the pie that CFE has. What they've got in owned plants and under contract, it looks like it's about 85% of the pie. It's actually about 93% of the pie, because part of that green slice is not interconnected to the system. The constitutional, prohibition on private participation did have one little outlet for private participation. It was self-supply. And it was so hard to get an interconnection, and there weren't many benefits to doing it, so a lot of these guys didn't even interconnect. And there's also some of the export directly to California in that slice. So we've got one dominant company that's got 93% of the generation capacity. Now, I'm going to talk about the problems that led to the reform. This is the main one. These are the rates. As you can see, the average rates in Mexico were 25% higher than in the U.S., but that was with a huge subsidy. The subsidy cost 3/4 of a point of the GDP. If there hadn't been a subsidy, the rates would have been 73% higher. And in certain segments, the industrial segments that really affect the economy, it was way higher. So that was the big driver, that the monopoly, the difficulty in making new investments and competing was causing our prices to be too high. All right, the next slide, this is about our renewable goals and our renewable reality. The goals are similar to what we've got here in California. We want to get to 35%, 40%, and then 50% of clean energy. That's including large hydro and nuclear. Most of that's going to come out of renewable growth because, as you know, the nuclear economics don't look very good, and large hydro is a limited resource. Where there is a big resource is in wind, solar, and geothermal in Mexico. But right now, it's a tiny slice. It's 4% of our generation mix. So we've got all this potential. It's basically unlimited, but we need to make it possible for different companies to come in and develop those projects. Finally, the last problem before the reform is the way that the system was divided. On the one hand, you had the CFE with the 93% of the generation that was doing an economic dispatch. They had a sort of an ISO. It's called SENACE, and I'll talk about that going forward. Their dispatch was relatively rational, but only CFE could participate in it. Every other private producer, they could only get in through a self-supply contract, which on the one hand it wasn't efficient because they weren't being co-optimized with the rest of the system. It was also onerous because you had to form a single company. You can see the logos of the consumer is on the line of the side of the generator because they had to form a single company and say that it was self-supply. And finally, there was open access, a big issue with open access. If any of these guys wanted to get interconnected to the system, to move power from where the plant could be to where the factories or the offices were, they had to go through a CFE. And there's obviously a conflict of interest that put the brakes on a lot of those projects. So we did a reform. And the main goals are the three I just mentioned. Lower the costs, more clean energy, and make sure that everyone can benefit from competition, not just the ones who could find a way into a self-supply scheme. Now, the 4 steps, things that we're doing right now in Mexico, which I'll talk about in this presentation, are the restructuring of the industry, the market, the clean portfolio standard, and a new system for planning and doing interconnections. Before I get into the detail, I want to talk about the guiding principles behind this. This is really the base of all the decisions that we make. When we design the market and we design the restructuring, we want to respect these. First of all, we understand that generators and loads are going to respond to prices. So we have to get out of the fiction that the government can mandate things if the prices aren't there to really incentivize the behavior. So we have a lot of focus on getting the prices right. 2 is we want the decisions to be made through competitive processes. So a lot of proposals where the government would set a specific quota for a specific technology, a specific price for a technology, are thrown out. We want the market to decide what is the cheapest source, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, and not have the governments keep their hands out of it as much as they can. 3rd, open access and non-discrimination. I think that's an obvious lesson, but it's not obvious in Mexico, where CFE has practically been the electric company for the last 50 years. So there's a special effort to make sure that every rule we write, there's no special CFE exception, a special CFE rule. Everything that we put out has to be accessible or applicable in the same terms for CFE as it is to anybody else. And finally, transparency. We're depending on the market to make decisions for us instead of making them back in the home offices of the Ministry of Energy. The market won't make decisions. Nobody will invest if they don't have the data to see where things are going. So there's a big focus on publishing everything that we've got and letting people make the decisions. Okay, so the first step, and this is only, I've just got one slide on this, is the restructuring. If we saw a slide of the electric industry before the constitutional reform and before the legal reform, it was basically one big CFE logo with a small sliver on the side for private self-supply. Now it's getting divided, and divided in both dimensions, horizontal and vertical, with the first step right there in the middle. That's SENACE is our CAISO. SENACE was the independent, it was the system operator within CFE. It wasn't independent. And the first thing we did within 3 weeks of passing the law was making SENACE independent. So the control center the regional control centers, 2,000 employees. I think CAISA does it with a lot fewer than 2,000. We have to gain some efficiencies there. But all the employees came out of CFE into an independent system operator that has no allegiances, no preferences for CFE in particular. And they're in the middle running the spot market and the long-term auctions, which I'll talk about in this presentation. On the CFE side, it's two kinds of division. Vertical, which looks horizontal on this slide. Generation has to be separate from transmission distribution. This is a stronger separation than a lot of regions of the United States have done. They will be separate legal entities with their own boards of directors, their own CEOs, and their own results to report. The idea is that the transmission company, the distribution company, shouldn't have any reason to give a special treatment to CFE's generators or to CFE's customers. On the generation side, you see it looks vertical, the horizontal separation. We don't want one generator with 93% of the market share. So that will be divided into a large number, somewhere between 5 and 8 different generating companies, and they'll all be independent as well. So the idea is they'd be rivals. One CEO actually dislikes the other CEO, and they compete with each other instead of collaborating. On the retail side, there's an important division between competitive retail and regulated retail. We'll be doing competitive retail right from the beginning, although it is a high threshold. It starts at a 3 megawatt threshold. It's already gone down to 2, and it'll keep going down. So all those customers can leave CFE. They can find a new retailer, or they can go directly into the market and negotiate directly with generators. And finally, transmission and distribution. It is worth pointing out that is the one area that remained reserved to the state under the Constitution. It wasn't possible to talk about private transmission or distribution companies at that level. But there is language that lets us do public-private partnerships, which allows for private investment in the operation, investment in the steel on the ground, in the operation, in the maintenance, responsibility for results. So it has a lot of the aspects of private investment in transmission distribution, with just the state in front of the service, technically giving the service. Okay, so I'll talk about the market. This is going to look really familiar. We've got 4 types of markets that are operated by SENACE, and one big piece that kind of covers it all. It's a short-term market, a spot market, a capacity market, a clean energy certificate market, and an FTR market. But it's important to point out that these markets up top are all short-term. Their job is to send the price signal that reflects exactly what is the marginal cost or the marginal value of a product in a given moment. We know that those prices are not going to be, or that those markets aren't going to be sufficient to get investment. No one is going to come and invest $1 billion in a plant, well, very few, to sell at spot prices. So all of this is overlaid with a system of long-term contracts. First of all private parties are free to do long-term contracts, but there will be a special place, a special marketplace. We're doing auctions to get a large number of long-term contracts arranged directly between the regulated retailer and anyone that wants to sell to it, and that's going to start this year. So I'll go into a little bit more detail into every bit of this. Starting with the short-term market, I don't have to go much into this because this is really familiar. This is a very similar market to the California market and a lot of markets around the U.S. Probably the bullet points that are worth really pointing out are, more than anything, that it's cost-based offers. By default, it's not market-based. Everyone has to offer marginal costs, and that's because of the presence of CFE. There will be exceptions that the market monitor will be checking, and they can grant exceptions to small fish. So maybe eventually the majority of generation will have an exception. But at the beginning, well, at CFE, this is a cost-based market. I want to talk particularly about imports and exports because I'm here in California, and this is going to be an important part of of the benefit of this, this reform. There are really 5 kinds of imports and exports. If you think about the combinations of whether the energy is coming from a system or an isolated plant, and whether it's going to a system or to an isolated load. All of these exist in either in Mexico with the California border, or with the Texas border, or with the Guatemala border. So our goal is to eliminate barriers, to make sure that as many companies as possible can compete to do these kinds of transactions. So when you look down the list, we're not requiring a lot of extra permits or a lot of extra registrations. When we can do the transactions through the Mexican spot market, they go through the Mexican spot market just like any other transaction. And if they don't go through the Mexican spot market, then we don't require hardly any regulation at all. So the idea is throw down the barriers and increase the trade with California and with the rest of the U.S. One last thing that's worth mentioning about the spot market is that we're doing it in stages. We have some ambitious aspirations about where we want this to go, but it can't all start at once. The first market has to be done pretty much with the software that's already in place in Mexico. So that means a third market, an hour-ahead market, won't be in place right away. That'll come in a couple years. It's in the rules, but it won't be done right away. So the import and export transactions at first will only be in the day-ahead market. The dispatch intervals will get shorter. Virtual trading, we're not going to allow that at first, but we will allow it eventually. Demand response, that's an important piece of our market, but we're not ready to do it, both from a market system operator perspective and from a retailing perspective. Right now, CFE has never separated metering distribution from the retail function. So before they can take on a challenge, we need to let them have some time to split up and learn how to separate those functions. And I'm going to talk about the last one because in a few minutes I'll talk about the capacity market. We know that the capacity market has some flaws, and eventually we would like to get to a system where the spot prices include enough income to pay for the missing money of a generator, and they can send an exact signal about when and where. But that's another step that we're not ready for. Because of the market power of CFE, we want to keep the prices, basically want to keep them low at the beginning. And we know that's sacrilegious as a policymaker, saying we want to keep prices low in the spot market. Prices should go where they want to go. But at first, they have to stay low. This is a new market. This is a major transition. I think eventually we can handle $1,000 prices. But if it happened on the first month of the market or the first year of the market, we could really be shooting ourselves in the foot. So the scarcity pricing is left for a second stage, and we depend on a capacity market to pay for missing money during the beginning of the market. So talk about the capacity market. I think you all know what these are for, so I don't need to say much about this slide. There are a couple novelties, though, which I've got in the next slides. First of all is the definition of what is capacity. We've seen the duck curve, and we are afraid that the hours in which we need capacity is going to change over time. Right now, everybody thinks that it is at 3 in the afternoon, but it's not going to stay that way, especially if we develop all of that great solar potential that I had on my second slide. So we're defining capacity as availability in critical hours without saying what they are. Well, we say how they're calculated. It's the hours of minimum reserves on the system. But every generator who comes in and signs a long-term contract to sell capacity should know. If it's a combined cycle, they don't really care. They'll be available pretty much whenever. But if it's a solar plant, they might not be generating electricity in the hours that are worth having capacity installed. So they might not want to commit to offering capacity for the long term. Another key about this is that the capacity product is as generated or as available. It's an unforced capacity product. So we're not paying for installed steel on the ground. We're paying for availability. That helps us a lot because we don't have to go after the fact and check who really had available what they said was going to have available. After the fact is the rule. After the fact is the first time that we actually check what were they selling. Okay, so I'll go on to the next. The other key about this capacity market is that it's done after the fact, and that simplifies a lot of the calculations. Now we know to really install a plant, people are going to want long-term contracts. So this capacity market doesn't have to try to do both jobs anymore. This capacity market doesn't have to be the place where a generator goes to get a contract to support a new investment. This capacity market can be a very precise price signal, but with not a whole lot of volume traded in it. We would expect most generators to be pre-contracted, and then this will be done after the fact to just show whether the system was long or whether the system was short, and try to get in the long term an average price around the cost of new entry, but send a precise signal that rises and falls with the system conditions. And that also helps us with market power. We had a big concern that CFE, even though it's real easy to control them in the spot market, you check whether the plant was available, you check what the costs really were, it was going to be really hard to control them in the capacity market if it were ex ante, because they could always say they weren't sure what capacity they were going to have. But by doing it ex post, the monitoring, it becomes a very easy problem. You've already witnessed what was available during the year. And if there was a question during the year, the market monitor went and checked during the year. So by the time you get to this after the fact market, you don't even have to ask the generators what they want to offer. It's already public knowledge what they had available. All right. The third market is the clean energy certificate market. So this comes out of one of the philosophies I mentioned at the beginning. We don't want the government to be deciding which technologies get what piece of the pie. We want them all to compete, and we don't want to mix the signals to be clean with the signals to actually generate in a certain hour. So we use the clean energy certificate market, and this is like capacity in the sense that it's an after the fact balancing. We expect most of the clean projects will get financed, make their decision to invest through a long-term contract. The long-term contract is worth more if they're going to have this product, but they've agreed to a fixed price with a retailer who has the obligation to buy these certificates. So then the actual market becomes just a balancing mechanism after the fact that relatively little volume is traded on. FTRs, I don't have to say much about, just repeat that we learned the lessons of the problems with physical transmission rights, so we will be doing a full nodal market with all transmission rights financial. Okay, so the auctions are an important piece of this market. This has probably been where we've got 90% of the comments and the questions and the attention about what we're doing. There are two auctions, and this is another, I think, big lesson that we learned, is that we have two different goals when we do auctions. One is to attract investment, and the other is to get the retailers hedged before the spot market shows up. And there are two different goals with different characteristics. Generation, to make an investment, needs a really long-term commitment, 15 or 20 years. Hedging doesn't need to be done for 15 years. With a 3-year rolling purchase of a third in every year, we're pretty happy about the hedging we can get. So we separate the auctions. I'll go into a little more detail about the long-term auctions because this has been the really important piece. So we want to get new investment in firm generation, and we want to get new investment in clean energy, but we don't want the government to decide who installs what and where. That's kind of the way the CFE did it, and it was never capable of evaluating all of the options. We want everyone to go in and compete. But there are different products, and different technologies have different products. Some have capacity, some don't. Some generate during the day, some generate during the night, some are in good places, some are in not so valuable parts of the network. So how do we let everyone come in and compete in a single auction, but pay for what's actually valuable? And that was the riddle that we've been working on for the last year, and I think we've solved it. So there are two pieces to the solution. One is you let all generators offer the combination of products that they have. You'll have combined cycles offering capacity. You'll have wind offering no capacity, but energy and clean energy certificates. You'll have hydro offering 3. You'll have geothermal offering 3 in different ratios. The buyer knows how much they need. No? The clean energy requirement is a requirement from the regulator. The capacity requirement is a requirement from the regulator. And you just set it up as a mixed energy problem. Which offers can be selected? Each offer has a different combination of products and a different price. What's the combination that maximizes the value of the products that the retailer wanted to buy? So that's one piece of the solution. And the other is, originally, we wanted to make all of the generators responsible for a flat block of energy in a single place so that they would bear the risk for generating more or less in different hours or generating in valuable or less valuable places. It turns out the transparency isn't there yet to do it. We'd like to get there one day, make the generators hedge their risks for generating in different hours to different places, but we can't ask that right now because there's no history. There's no history, and even the data to do the modeling is only slowly coming out. So we are putting in place a mechanism that's going to work at the beginning, and maybe eventually we'll phase it out, where the difference is based on price and the difference is based on time of day, are penalized or awarded, but based on the forecast that the ministry does today. So we're going to pay more where we think the energy is worth more and when we think it's worth more, and we'll lock that in for the contracts in this auction, and we'll redo it next year. That leaves some risk on the buyer's side, but it's not a risk of buying projects that are obviously in the wrong place. It's just a risk that things turn out differently than were forecasted. All right, so that's basically the overview of the market. I'm just going to talk about the transmission planning briefly. This used to be done by CFE, and it was a problem. CFE would only install lines where CFE had generation projects. So we've changed the process. It's now going to be done by the ISO. And there's an important last piece, which is CFE doesn't have to build the lines either. At the end of the planning process, the ministry will decide whether CFE gets to build them or whether they have to put them out for private companies to finance, construct, and operate. And we just did the first round. The first planning document was published in June, and we announced the first 2 projects that will be done by private companies. So in the next couple of months, we will be launching 2 auctions, 2 tenders, one to build a 1,000-kilometer DC line, plus minus 500 kV DC line. It's a big project to connect the renewable area of Oaxaca with the center of the country. And another smaller project, it's about a 25-kilometer submarine, 115 kV line. So those will be the first private transmission projects, and that will make sure that CFE can't become a roadblock even in the construction phase of transmission. Finally, I'm just going to talk about interconnection and integration with California and with the U.S. These are the statistics on where we were last year. It's not very big if you look at those numbers, but we have big ambitions. The reason why there weren't very many transactions with California last year is because the only part of the Mexican system that's interconnected is the Baja California system, about 2,500 megawatt system. So the first big step is to interconnect that system with the rest of the Mexican system, our 40,000 megawatt system. So that's one of the projects that's going to be evaluated for inclusion in this year's Protocen, and I think it'll go in this year. And in the long run, we are aware of all the benefits of integration. I think we've already been talking about today in terms of renewable integration and taking better advantage of the resources we have. So one last thing. This is a citation from the law in Spanish and in English, and it doesn't directly say CAISO in it, but it was written with CAISO in mind. This is the part of the law that says that our system operator, SENACE, can make agreements with other system operators to share responsibilities for control and operation. And we put that in the law so there wasn't any doubt that our SENACE can become part of the energy imbalance market. I can't make any big announcements today. We still need to get the market up and running, and that's clear. Our own market is the first step, but we're very aware of the benefits of joining, and it's something that both SENACE and the Ministry of Energy are looking at with a lot of optimism. So, just to close out, this is a review of what we've done so far. I'm not going to go through it, but just kind of show off, we've really gotten a lot done in the last year. From the constitutional reform to the legal reforms, separating out SENACE, and the last one is an important one, which is we published about a 200-page document, which is the market basis. Those are the rules for the power market that cover everything I've talked about and more. The next stage is writing the business practice manuals, and some of those are out for public comment right now. There will be more out for public comment in about 2 weeks. So you're all invited to check out the Mexican Regulatory Improvement website and send us your comments. In terms of next steps, we have the goal of getting the spot market started by next January. The auctions will be published for generators to start to consider within about 2 weeks, and the offers will be received next March. And then we'll go on to add more things, the FTRs, the capacity market, the medium-term auctions, and finally the clean energy certificates will go live in 2018. Finally, just to conclude, the goals are lowering costs, more renewable energies, and sharing the benefits. And I think that with the restructuring of the industry and the new market, we're going to accomplish those goals. And I hope that you all can be part of it. So, thank you.
Jeff, thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Muy bien. That's all I've got. At this point, we're done with the lunch phase, and we have a networking segment till about 2:45. At 2:45, we will begin over in the other room with another scintillating panel of regulators and yours truly, and I think you'll enjoy it. John Danner will once again be the MC, and I think we'll have a lively conversation. Looking forward, we're going to have significant time after that panel before dinner to continue networking. Then we'll have dinner back in here. So 2:45 over in the other room. Thanks, everyone.